I want to hear cannons. Downfield, pull up, ball to the 5, touchdown Tampa Bay. Mike Evans does it again. Fire the cannons, Bucs.
It's first and goal. That's picked off. And who else? Randy Gregory. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers may ride to the Super Bowl with that one.
Third down, 18. Dropping Gannon, looking Gannon. Throws up with a head. Intercepted. 30. Derek Brooks 30. Brooks to the 25. 20. Derek Brooks all the way. There it is. The dagger's in. We're going to win the Super Bowl. And then the cannons go. Fire them. Keep on firing them. Keep on firing them.
Hello and welcome back, Bucs fans, to a brand new edition of the Cannon Fire Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Rhett Matthew. Joined alongside me, my good buddy and co-host from BucsNation.com, Evan Wanish. Joining us once again on the show today, it's a pleasure to welcome back legendary Tampa Bay sports reporter. He is like a Swiss Army knife, if you will, really covering a little bit of everything. I ran into him at the Jake Paul fight a couple of weeks ago. Ladies and gentlemen, Rock Riley is back on the Cannon Fire Podcast. Rock, happy Monday to you.
Gentlemen, always a pleasure, man. This is a good time of year.
Absolutely. Getting back into the swing of things. It is the first week of training camp for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, back in the facility full time. First day of pads today as they kind of get back into the swing of things. And I feel like we are on the precipice of big news, but we're not quite there yet. We're going to talk about that in a little bit more. But I guess we can just get it out of the way right here at the start of the show. Tristan Wirfs and his upcoming contract extension. It seems inevitable, and we have heard time and time again about how the Bucs are making progress on it and how it's going to get done no matter what. We got another update today, and it's more of the same, but it seems like things are a little more optimistic. I think everyone's just constantly reminding the fan base and reminding everyone else that, like, this deal is going to get done. But at the end of the day, Rock, the Bucs have a goal, and their goal is to make Tristan Wirfs the highest paid left tackle in the history of the NFL. It doesn't happen overnight.
No, it doesn't. I mean, there's just so much involved in that. But GM Jason Light had said, we want to make him the highest paid tackle in all of football. They already made Antoine Winfield the highest paid safety in all of football. They love him. He loves them. He ended up, so he came out today with the pads on, and I'm like, wow, I'm really surprised. They went into individual drills. He was in there. It was physical. But once it went to team drills, he had already talking to head coach Todd Bowles before the practice and said, look, you know I'm a team guy. Bowles said, of course, you've been here all off season. I get it. But he goes, I don't want to get injured. And Bowles said, I totally get it. Afterwards, Wirfs told us that he was there the day that Ryan Jensen, the former center, went down. And things can happen like that. There's a lot at stake. So when it came to team drills, he watched from off by the side, but he's been there all the time. He also said today, guys, that he was there for mandatory minicamp, but in OTAs, he wasn't, but he was in the building and he was working out inside, looking through the big glass windows that they have on the players on the field, and it was killing him to not be out there. So we're right down. It's the fourth quarter. We're down to the 2-minute drill, and I would assume it will get done very, very soon.
Yeah, you just look in the NFL. You don't see good tackles hit the open market, let alone these types of tackles, especially the age Wirfs is. Jason Light loves his draft picks, loves to reward his draft picks when they deserve, being rewarded, right? He probably wants to keep every single draft pick that hits. You can't do that in the reality of the NFL, so you have to pick and choose. This is something to where the Buccaneers are not going to let this player walk, because really, he is almost impossible to replace right now. He is so good. He was so good at right tackle. And when he made the switch from right to left, there was a little bit of questions about that adjustment. It's a different position, but with how good he was at left tackle last year, he didn't miss a beat. And I think, to me, that not only, raises value to the team, raises value on the market as well. Left tackles get paid a lot more than right tackles a lot of time, protecting that quarterback's blind side. So the Bucs, trust me, they have no plans to let Tristan Wirfs, even get close to the open market. I would be pretty surprised if the deal wasn't done before the season starts. Just like Rock said, there's a lot that is involved in this. It will be the biggest contract contract the Buccaneers have ever handed out in franchise history. He will be the highest paid offensive lineman for now, right? Until the next guy comes along and breaks it, right? So he'll be the highest paid offensive lineman in NFL history for a little bit. And deservedly so. He is really, going to deserve every penny that he's going to get. And I don't think, if you're a Bucs fan who's out there, getting a little nervous, I know there was a report from Jordan Schultz last night saying, oh, they're miles apart. There was a little bit of a kickback on that, that they maybe weren't miles apart, but nothing is, imminent. I still would be very surprised if this deal wasn't done sooner rather than later.
Yeah, you're talking about guaranteed money, a signing bonus, performance bonus, a length of contract, payout, cash value, incentives that you can pack into that. The way the Bucs front office has been structuring these deals, potential void years we're talking about. So this is a game-changing extension, and just like you had mentioned, Evan, this is going to be the largest contract in the history of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So it's going to take a little bit of time, but I mean, just saying more of the same here today. It's going to happen. And I think Tristan Wirfs, his positive attitude throughout the entire thing is another really good sign, because you've got a lot of guys that are sitting around waiting for deals that want nothing to do with the team facilities. And Wirfs is out there doing, I would say, as much as he can within reason. Yes. Showed up today, first full day of pads. He showed up in pads, went through the individual period, but did not do the full team work. But regardless, he's out there getting as much as he can, Rock.
Yeah, and he also, like all off season, a lot of these guys, he was there the entire off season at the facility. And, his wife had the baby, and he told her, he's like, he told his agent, I cannot sit here. I know we're waiting for the new deal. I got to be there. I got to be with my teammates. It's also a new offense. So he did. That's what Bowles, head coach Todd Bowles said today. He's not behind. Sometimes these guys come in, it's going to take him a little bit. Again, there's new terminology. He's been there the whole time with everybody. So he is honestly the best team guy that I think I've ever been around and covered. And I can't wait till it's finally done. Today it was Justin. I don't even know how to pronounce his name. Is it Skull or Scully? He was the guy that was the left tackle for today. He's not going to be the left tackle once they play even game number 1. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So we talked about Wirfs and, obviously his positive attitude, the tone he's setting for his teammates, showing up to the facility every day. Let's talk about a guy on the other end of the spectrum here. Wanted to get your 2 cents on the Randy Gregory situation. I think everyone's echoing a lot of the same that was said when he didn't show up for OTAs. This probably has something to do with what he's got going on between him and the league, legal wise, but the outstanding bill that he has for himself as of right now is over $400,000 and counting in fines from the NFL. So, he's not there. The Bucs aren't talking about him. They can replace his roster spot if they need to. They put him on the didn't show up list, but it's been a pretty open and shut conversation with Todd Bowles. But Rock, have you heard anything between Bowles first talking to the media and today?
Not a word. We have not heard a word, because I don't think he's been in contact with anybody with the Bucs. That's what really blows me away. We've seen the picture that the Bucs sent out of him signing the contract with the grin. A lot of people are commenting, is he buzzed or whatever? But I mean, he's got the grin. He's got the hat on. He did a Zoom call with the local media. We talked to him. He was all gung-ho. And then that was it. MIA. And then we asked Bowles during OTA's minicamp, have you had any contact at all with him? He goes, nope. And Bowles wasn't going to reach out. So that really blows me away. You know what I mean? If you got to even call up, like, look, man, I got the lawsuit against the league. Can you give me more time? Nothing. We haven't heard anything. So, and now it's not, I think it was brought up today, but like nobody even talks about him. They're moving on.
Yeah, I just wonder, how long, they can actually continue to do this, because, look, okay, they can, not talk about him all they want. It's going to be on the minds of a lot of people, though, right? Because it's going to be looming there, because, he was one of the guys that they thought was going to help, right? That was going to help that pass rush. Now, I'm not saying they were expecting him to come in here and be an instant starter. Or, he's going to be probably more of a rotational piece, but an important piece in a young pass rush room, right? There's a lot of young guys in that room who I liked, signing the veteran presence. I thought when this offseason came, I thought the Buccaneers should have signed a veteran pass rusher. And when they did, I thought it was a good move. But, at this point, at some point, you just got to cut your losses, right? And I do think the Buccaneers, I would be very surprised if Randy Gregory's on the team come week one. I would be pretty surprised. Right now, technically, I don't believe he counts against the 90-man roster because he's on the did not report list.
Correct.
So they technically, don't have a roster spot right now for him. But I would be surprised if they want to keep him on there much longer than they have to. So I wouldn't expect Randy Gregory to be a Buck much longer.
They already picked up a tight end. He came from the UFL, the USFL. And he looks pretty good. He's rounding into shape. We talked to some Buccaneer players. They know him. They say he can play. So I honestly think that they have moved on.
Yeah, I agree. I think it'll be a non-story by the time September rolls around. And, it is what it is. There is the Randy Gregory story.
It's weird, man. It's
strange.
I haven't seen anything like this before. I really haven't.
And one more thing. I'm glad you guys brought this up because when we're there, there is no drama.
Yeah.
Other than the Randy Gregory thing that, again, the players are not, nobody mentions him. They don't even think about him. Other than that, there is no holdouts. There's no problems. Nobody's getting in trouble. Some of the players were talking about how Bowles, it's almost reminds me of like the old Dungy thing where they're afraid to screw up because they have so much respect for him. You know what I mean? And so there's nothing else to write about. And that's a good thing.
Yeah.
They're just getting in the work. It's all like one as a team, and the vibe being there every day is really, really good.
Yeah, I know we had this conversation a little bit the last time we had you on, but it just goes to show the progression of the culture, some would call it, around the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You have a group of players that are committed to perfecting their craft this time of year. They're not worried about other things. They're not getting in trouble partying in Soho. They're not getting caught with a DUI. There's nothing like that. And even the in-house things that have yet to be worked out, like the Tristan Wirfs contract extension, it's not causing any holdups. It's not causing any drama. Tristan Wirfs is there every day. He's ready to work. He's ready to help this team. And that's a great thing. But let's continue the conversation here, talking about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers pass rush and diving a little more into some of these players who have popped up and really got people excited. You're starting to put the pads on, which is when you can get a better estimation of where these guys are potentially going to be. And there's one guy that I think about when I talk about the pass rush and that outside linebacker room, and it's going to be second-year outside linebacker Yaya Diaby. Led the team in sacks last year with, I believe, 7.5, close to 8 sacks on a rookie season with limited playing time. I said on the last episode that I have a lot of personal stock in this guy, and I'm excited to see what he can do. I think he can take a massive leap this season, and it seems I'm not alone. There's a lot of people excited about this kid. He's been winning a lot of reps.
Oh, of all the players this camp, he stands out probably at the top. Maybe we'll get to some other players on the other side of the ball, but he has worked on his craft in the offseason. He knows he was getting by with physical ability. And he also has shown up at the facility. This is before OTAs. Tristan Wirfs says, you've seen him, right? My God. So physical specimen, great attitude. And I think you're right, Rhett. The sky is the limit for him. I really do. When he first came in, his face. Now, you guys are a little bit younger, but he looked like Bruce Smith. Bruce Smith was a former Buffalo Bill. He looks like him in the face, and they would call him Baby Smith. And he was like, he didn't know what was going on. Like he's in the NFL. They gave him a nickname already. But how far he has come now. And he comes out every day, and he's always doing this. Like he just loves football and loves being there. I think he's going to have a big year.
Yeah, I mean he's one of the guys the Bucs are relying on, right? I mean he is clearly a guy that the Bucs are very high on. It's because just like Rhett said, it's limited playing time he had last year and getting that 7.5 sack. He wasn't named a full-time starter, I believe, until week 12 in Indianapolis was when he was like the starter. So then after that he sort of caught fire, but before then he was in a rotational role, a very limited role. So I am curious to see what he can do a full 17 games of being mostly, the guy there. And, I don't want to put too much on his plate. After all, it's his second year, but I do like the potential there. And I do think he can be, I think, and, he was a former Buccaneer and stuff, so this will make sense because a lot of people watched him. But when I look at him, I see a guy kind of like a Jason Pierre-Paul, it was never a 15, 16, 17 sack guy, but was always good to get you in the high, the eights, the nines, the tens, 11s, with a lot of energy, a guy that a lot of people respect in the locker room, a hard worker, and sort of a leader on that defense. I sort of see a lot of that in Yaya Diaby. And look, if the Buccaneers can get that out of him, if that's Diaby's career, I think they'd be pretty happy with that. So, I do think there is a lot of potential there.
I talked about it on the last episode as well, and I love to bring this up whenever I can. But one of the things that I love to hear about with Diaby is the intensity of which he practices. And you hear that word tossed around a lot when they talk about, classic old school guys or the legends, greats of the game. They practice how they play, high intensity. Rock, I'm sure you've seen this clip, but it's John Randall at a Vikings practice, and he's running through an individual drill, and he does it. And then the practice squad guy does it. Same practice, same day, same team, but you can tell which one is obviously John Randall and which one is not. So I think practicing with intensity, a young player looking to improve on what was already a highly productive rookie season, it's hard for me to really not buy into the hype, but I am excited. Some other names in that outside linebacker room, though, some younger guys. Chris Braswell, I guess, made a couple of plays, draft pick out of Alabama, and Marquise Watts, who has been on the roster as well, is showing up here and there with a couple of nice wins.
Yeah, both are names to watch out for. I think Braswell. I like Braswell. He's kind of my sleeper. He's really stood out for being a rookie. Now, Marquise Watts, I know Jason Light had mentioned him, and I even think it was Todd Bowles on the opening press conference, Marquise Watt. They were running the football today. They started, they put the pads on. They did their individual drills. They did position drills. And then they went 11 on 11, and they started doing some runs. And they came over to the media. They go, you know what? It's normally done. We have some angry runs. We'll let you guys shoot a little video of that. We're like, oh, great. And there was a particular play today where it was the twos that were in there. And Marquise Watt just got pancaked by O'Keefe. I mean, O'Keefe took him totally out of the play, down, and Marquise Watt took off his hand and he went, oh, like he knew it was on him. Now, look, I'm not bringing up like, oh, Marquise Watt has looked bad. It was one particular play, but it's also the first day in pads. So you're going to have that. But that just kind of stood out. And I was sitting right there, and then I've seen that video. A couple of different outlets are using it, but Wolfer was in at quarterback. There was twos and threes in there. But those are two names to watch out for. Yes, I agree. And I think Braswell, it looks like it's a good draft pick.
Yeah, Marquise Watts probably won't tell he won't tell you himself, but I bet he was so pissed off because he knew they were taping that rep. He knew he got caught in 4K. They had the nice expensive lenses out, so he was pretty pissed off. Let's talk about the other side of the football, though, and there's a lot of guys who have been making some statements. We'll keep the conversation going with the younger guys, and this one has to do with the wide receiver 3 position battle. Jalen McMillan has really been a sight for sore eyes, and he's getting a lot of compliments from the veterans on this team, and they talk about how graceful he is, how he plays with a good feel for the game, a good feel for the ball. He looks fluid when he's out there, and that's high praise, especially coming from guys like Chris Godwin and Mike Evans.
Yeah, those guys are not going to BS you. That's one thing about Evans and Godwin. They don't say much when they talk to the media. Godwin talks a little bit more, but what they say, they mean. There's no like sugarcoating. There's also not pumping up. They tell it like it is. And both were saying that, the kid's got something. And then when we talked to him, how confident he comes up. And I was talking to some other media members that have been watching all these practices. No moment is too big. Normally it is when you're just coming out of college for your first NFL training camp. He flat out told us the other day, he's like, I want to be the pro. I want to make the Pro Bowl. How about that? That confident. And he's looked up Baker and he said, the guys, he said his number one priority is right now, have Baker trust him. Because when it comes down to the live bullets, they're in there, boom, 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 that's the kid. Boom, I'm going to go to him. How about that? That's smart enough to have that wherewithal now. I want Baker to look at me, throw me the football. He had another touchdown, nice catch, end zone today. Early on in the red zone, Buccaneer offense has been way ahead of the defense in the red zone. They've looked very, very good, scoring touchdowns, mostly on the passes. But McMillan has had some really good corner of the end zone and a nice one today. I think I'm not coming on here as Mr. Homer. Everything is great. That's not how life goes. But I'm telling you what I'm seeing. And that's he's looked really, really good for early in camp. Let's call it like that.
Yeah. And I mean, you mentioned about, McMillan wanting Baker to trust him. Based on what we've seen early, right? And again, it is early, and whether the preseason or the regular season, things can change. But it looks like Baker is starting to develop that trust. He's going to him a lot. You're seeing a lot of plays with Jalen McMillan, and it's not like, Trask is throwing to McMillan or Wolford's throwing to McMillan. No, it's Baker Mayfield throwing to these guys. So clearly, they are building some type of chemistry, or some type of rapport there, and I think that's important because look, even if let's say McMillan doesn't start the season as wide receiver 3, right? And we'll get into that. Trey Palmer is still a talented player.
Definitely.
McMillan was a top 100 pick. He clearly is in this team's future plans in some way, right? Or else they wouldn't have used a top 100 pick on him. So maybe not as much this year, but maybe down the line. At some point, this guy's going to come up big for this team, or at least they hope he comes up big, right? So I do think the early returns are good. Like you said, Rock, it's early. It was good to see him, still perform today in the pads. We talk a lot about on this show. We mentioned it last week about, Kenny Bell and stuff, dominating training camps when it was just shorts and t-shirts, but when the pads came on, it was a little different. It was nice to see McMillan also make plays. And look, rookie season, there's going to be ebbs and flows, right? There's going to be days in training camp where McMillan doesn't look good, right? There's going to be days where Trey Palmer is the better wide receiver of the two. It's going to be up and down, right? It's going to be that roller coaster as McMillan continues to adjust to the NFL. But I do like the kid. I think there's a lot to like there, and I think he's going to play a good bit for him. Even if he is wide receiver 4 on the depth chart, I still think he's going to play a good bit for him.
I'm with you because we always like to pinpoint, it's it's Godwin and Evans and Godwin. Who's number 3? And who's number 3? Oh, he's number 3. It's almost like a guy that might start the game, but whoever gets hot is going to be in there. They're going to need the 4th receiver. They're going to need another guy coming in. And that's not even talking about somebody that's going to go down. We know in the past, Evans with the hamstring, things are going to happen. So Trey Palmer's in the mix. Raheem Jarrett is another one that Bowles keeps on mentioning. All those guys, they're going to need all those guys. So, but right now, like you mentioned McMillan, it looks like a really, really good pick, and it looks like nothing is too big for him at this point. But Trey Palmer, he's funny. He I don't know if you saw him yesterday. He's like, you feel me? Everything after he says, you feel me? You feel me? And I put him on my podcast right at the end of minicamp, and I came up to him. I said, you feeling pissed off? Because you know about that, right? He's
yeah.
And I said, you feeling pissed off? He goes, yeah, man. I'm him. I said, where'd that come from? He goes, my kid, my son. I said, you got a son? He goes, yeah. He goes, he wakes up and he says, Daddy, I'm pissed off. Really? Little kid? So that's where that came from. But I hope he wakes up pissed off before every single game.
There is another guy who has got a lot of potential to make some plays for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this season out of that wide receiver room. But to be quite honest with you, I don't think people are talking about him enough, and that's Chris Godwin. I know that he's been able to produce for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but he talked specifically before this year's training camp about how good he feels and how he feels this is the closest he's ever been to before.
There's a lot on the line for Chris Godwin, too. He's in a contract year, so yeah. There's a lot on the line here for him.
Yeah, absolutely, and they've also talked about his role in the offense kind of shifting under Liam Cohen, his offensive coordinator, going to be playing him out of the slot a lot more where he has had success and he has been productive, but there were multiple weeks last year where I kind of thought Godwin was going to emerge as a safety blanket for Baker Mayfield, especially when he was building chemistry with guys early on in the season. But it just didn't really play out that way. There were some weeks where he was obviously highlighted, but I think this year he's really going to surprise a lot of people. And it's going to make that decision for the Bucs at the end of the season that much more difficult.
Godwin didn't score a touchdown last year until week 8, I believe. I think that was his first touchdown. So I mean, they tried to get him involved in some ways. It just didn't happen. But I do think you're right. It is a lot of Mike Evans or Jalen McMillan or Trey Palmer, right? And then you got Sterling Shepard in the mix. Well, I think they're going to look at Shepard and McMillan, right, as the new guys, right, the shiny toys. And Chris Godwin, is still a supremely talented player.
Yeah, he's reliable. So I'm sorry, Rock. He's reliable. He's consistent. He's fun to watch. He's athletic. He can make the tough catches, and he absolutely 100% brings a lot to the table. Had a big time play today over Antoine Winfield Jr.
Yeah, you know what, guys? I think, and you guys are good on stats, Evan. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think Godwin only had. Was it like 3 touchdowns last year and 2 the year before, or 2 and 3? I think he's only had 5 touchdowns in 2 years.
Yeah, the last year was really low for him. I actually think he had a rushing touchdown as well last year, but was really struggling to find the end zone this past season.
And you are right, Rhett, because he also said the other day, like, coming off that surgery, it takes like a good full year. This is the best that he has ever felt. So, and he did not complain about not getting the ball in the red zone, this and that. That's the one thing in my entire career covering the NFL, and it's been a long time. I don't like to admit how old I am, but it's been a long time. And I would say, 70% of wide receivers are divas. A lot of times I'll go in the locker room and it's like, you won. Yeah, but I didn't get a touchdown. Or how many balls did so-and-so get? Seriously, that is the majority of receivers. Evans and Godwin are not divas. They are unselfish. It is about winning. As long as they can get far into the Super Bowl, try to get to the Super Bowl. I don't know if you guys saw. Did you see the video that the Bucs put out when Bowles gave the speech? And he's like, it's about getting to the Super Bowl. It's about winning. We want guys in the team. I thought it was real interesting.
Yeah. And the thing about that, right? I think that's great for the young guys, for Trey Palmer, for Jalen McMillan, for Raheem Jarrett, who just coming into the NFL, to look at those two guys as examples, right? Because look, and you were there at Rock, obviously. Keyshawn Johnson, great wide receiver, really good wide receiver, but he had his issues, right? He certainly had his issues. Not saying he wasn't a talented player. He was a darn good football player, but when things weren't going well, he would let you know about it, and he didn't go about it in the best way sometimes. Deshaun Jackson was another guy a few years ago. Good football player, really good football player. But when things weren't going well, he would let you know. And Mike Evans, really for his entire career, there hasn't really been an instance where Mike Evans or Chris Godwin, where you're like, you could go about that a different way, or you didn't have to do that, or you kind of threw that guy under the bus. And I think that's great for guys like Trey Palmer, Jalen McMillan, or Raheem Jarrett to learn from, and to see, just entering the NFL, this is how it's done, right? Look how successful these guys have been. Multiple Pro Bowls, a Super Bowl championship, all pros, Evans, on track to be a Hall of Famer, so I think that those two things, when those two guys, the characteristics there, I think are invaluable. Because you can't teach that stuff, right? That's the stuff where you can't, a coach can't develop that. It's sort of ingrained in you. It's just, because look, for most of these guys' lives, they're the best player on their team. In high school and Pop Warner or college, they're the best player on their team. They've been told that their entire lives. So when you get to the NFL and you're suddenly not even close to the best player on your team, it's a different. It could be a shock to the system. So I think having Godwin there, having Evans there, how they are in that locker room, I think really matters, and it helps a lot.
Here's my best Deshaun Jackson story that I tell. The time that Jameis was out serving his suspension for the whole thing, groping in the drive-thru, and it was Fitzpatrick, and Fitzpatrick had that big game. It was at Ray J. That's the time I was there in the locker when he put on Deshaun Jackson's stuff
against the Eagles. Yeah,
there you go. So we go over to Deshaun Jackson. TJ Reeves, he's a sideline reporter for the Buccaneer Radio Network. And I was right there. TJ's there. They had won this big game. Everybody's hooting and hollering. Fitzpatrick had a big game. And he goes, man, that was some win. It was over the Eagles. It was at home. And Fitzpatrick was on fire. You guys were feeling it. How good was that win? He's like, I felt good. I'm X amount of away from Jerry Rice's record and Jerry Rice and this and that and this and that. And TJ's second question, he's like, no, I know that's right. That's right. And again, what about the team win, man? And he's like, when I got into this, I told my family I was going to try to beat Jerry Rice. Do you see what I'm saying about like individual numbers sometimes? And you mentioned like Deshaun Jackson, Keyshawn, I could be here all day with a Keyshawn story. It's hysterical. And he was one guy. I got to give a credit to Keyshawn. He told like it is, Gruden could not put up with it. We would come in the locker room and he'd start saying, how many balls did so-and-so? How many touches did I get? Like talking out loud, But Keyshawn used to do, back in the day, those players all had radio shows on the radio station WDA in Tampa Bay. And they would have like a host. Sapp had a show, Simeon, they all had shows. Keyshawn, he's like, I don't need a host. He was at a mall. Not an international mall, West Shore Mall. He's like, I don't need a host. He told the PD, I do it myself. Oh, okay. He did a good job. He's taking calls. So he told me, he goes, I'll be on the media one day. When he came back for a Buccaneers Ring of Honor and they bring back the team, it was the only time he's ever come back. And he had been on ESPN. And I go down in the hallway to go out there with Gene Deckerhoff and Keyshawn sees me. He goes, Rob, hey, didn't I tell you I was going to be big in the media? Didn't I tell you? I said, yes, you've been doing it. You've been doing it, Keyshawn. So those, they were great players. They were different types, but they're not like how Evans and Godwin are.
Hey, I mean, you talk about big personalities and guys who put high expectations on themselves, on their position group. Rookie Bucky Irving out of the running back room has a lot of great things to say about the running back room this year. He has high expectations for the run game, says it's going to be, quote, fantastic. He's been getting an increased workload. Chase Edmonds been sidelined, I believe, first 3-4 days of camp so far. He hasn't been out there at all. So I have to assume that kind of streamlines things a little bit more for Bucky Irving. But your thoughts on Rashad White and Bucky Irving here after the first 4 days or so at camp?
Yeah, you're gonna need Bucky Irving. You're gonna need him. And he was asked today, like, look, we know he's one of those guys. He's very shifty. He's shifty. He takes off. You can see it. Okay. But you got to be able to block in this system. Bowles even said it. And I was watching today. I was right there. They were doing blocking drills. And for being a little guy, he was holding his own. Then he went over onto the radio and he was like, the host asked him, Donovan, he's like, you got to be able to block in this. And what's that? Like, you had the pads on today. And he goes, ain't no problem. I did it in Oregon. I got no problem. Like, very, very confident. So he's got to be able to get it done. But I'm looking forward to seeing what Liam Cohen can do using both Rashad White and Bucky Irving.
I think having guys on the line of scrimmage and around that area who are not afraid to get physical is going to go a long way, because we've kind of said it for a couple of years now. As far as the offensive line goes, when you look at run support, the Bucs need a couple of body movers. They need people who can get in there and just move guys around. And whether it's extra tight ends with a guy like O'Keefe in the formation, or it's a guy like Bucky Irving picking up an assignment, you want physical players, and it's good to see that they have that. But talking a little bit more about the tight ends as well, O'Keefe making a big play, going to be interesting to see his role. But Evan, your thoughts on Irving and kind of the run game this year?
Yeah, I do think, the short yards thing, and it seems like every offseason, right, that fans are like, oh, they need to sign a short yards back. They need to sign a big bruiser. They need to sign a guy who, when it's 3rd and 1 is going to get you that one, or when it's, 4th and goal on the 1-inch line, you're going to be able to get it across. And, okay, you can sign the big, the big bruising back and try and do it that way. And Bucky Irving isn't that, but you don't have to be that, right? You don't have to be that. Bucky Irving was one of the best players in college football last year at breaking tackles. It's just, his yards after contact, his numbers were high. It was a lot of yards after contact. So Bucky Irving's the guy who can be maybe that solution, right, to the Bucs' short yardage problems. It got a little bit better last year. I know in 2022, the short yardage thing was a real issue, but I think Rachaad White is still going to be, this team's running back one, but just like Rock said, they're going to need Bucky Irving because in today's day and age, the NFL, there's very few, right, true bell cows. There's very few guys where, all right, you're going to get 90% of the snaps and for every single game. It's just not how the NFL works nowadays. So, and that's, hopefully Rachaad White stays healthy the whole year, but guys get banged up. Chase Evans is banged up right now. So, Bucky Irving may have to step into even a bigger role. And I am curious and excited to see how he's utilized. But I do think the skill set is similar to Rachaad White. It's not the exact same, but I do want to see how they use a guy like Bucky Irving.
It's going to be interesting, too, to see how certain guys along that line of scrimmage improve. Expectations are high for the offensive line. You still have to kind of figure out what's going on between Sua Opeta and Ben Bredeson. Who's going to find that last spot
that's
going
to be, you're going to find that answer probably in the preseason games, I would assume, right? When it's against other competition, not yourself, the preseason games, the joint practices, which, they'll have coming up as well. Really quick, though, you mentioned tight end Coke Keys. I want to mention another tight end who's actually sort of impressed me from afar. That's Devin Culp. He's made some plays out there, had a touchdown today off a ball from Kyle Trask. So 7th round pick, take a flyer on a guy. Hey, maybe he makes the back end of that roster. Who knows?
Yes.
Yeah. That's a good one. I think he's in competition with Payne Durham. Payne Durham did not play football, organized football, man, until his senior year in high school. How about that? He was a lacrosse player. So when you've only played very, very limited time in football, you're behind the 8 ball, but you also have a ways to go. And Bowles mentioned him today, said that he's a strong physical guy and he's gotten a lot better. Now, when I talked to him at minicamp, he came on my podcast, and the end of it, he goes, I got to make the team. I was like, wow, a guy that was already on the team last year, honestly. But I think that's going to be a battle. Jason Light likes Culp. You're right. So, yeah, that's something to watch in these preseason games. And so far, during these 5-6 practices, on the left guard position, Bredeson, I've been counting, Bredeson has been running with the ones more than Opeta, if that means anything right now at all.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Obviously, the preseason games are going to be telling. That's where not only you see these guys run with, I guess, whatever unit, they'll probably both get some reps with the ones, but consistency as the game goes on. I know they're not playing starters by the 3rd and the 4th quarter, but if you're still in and you're getting those reps down the wire, the consistency is going to be a big thing to watch here in the preseason games. Wanted to talk about the defensive side of the ball here as we wrap up. A couple more highlights from today. Former Buccaneers Pro Bowler Gerald McCoy was out there today talking with Kalijah Kancey and some other guys along the defensive line. Jumped on NFL Network for an appearance with Mike Evans. We got some good juice out of that. Did you get a chance to talk to G-Mac out there today? Did you see him walking around? And your thoughts on him, obviously still showing a lot of love to Tampa to this day.
He loves Tampa Bay, and he loves the Buccaneers. It was a shame that he wasn't able to get a ring. You know what I mean? It really was.
Yeah.
And I could tell watching him. Now, he's working for NFL Network, and he's doing a good job. He came over to the fans by the back end zone. He was taking pictures, taking selfies, and they were calling him to come over on NFL Network. He's like, okay, I'll be over there in a second. He was on the sidelines. He was talking to the young. Yeah, we've seen the video with Kalijah. He was talking to some of the young players. It looked to me, guys, like, because he's not that old. He wanted to be out there, man.
Yeah.
Some guys, it's like, okay, my time is long gone. I give it some time. You could just see it. And he loved it. And then, I don't know, did you see the selfie that he did when he did his run and at the house that he still has in Tampa?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Man, got drenched in sweat.
Oh my God. Oh my God. It's so hot and humid out there anyway. But no, it was nice. It was nice. It was cool. He loves it. He loves it. And Kalijah Kancey told us that he did show him the one move on how to get by with the arm and get by. And he goes, that's going to help. I'm going to use that. So I thought that was kind of cool.
Also, shout out Gerald McCoy buying all the Bucs employees the water ice, right? You got the truck out there, that's pretty cool,
Kona Ice.
Yeah.
Kona Ice. He used to do that. I remember Jameis was always over there.
Yeah.
They loved it. They backed that truck on the field. And what he also did was he did a thing for Joe McCoy, for the Buccaneer employees. He had the Kona Ice truck in the front and told all the employees, come out, get your Kona Ice, then it's going to go in the back for the players. So that's a cool move. That is kind of cool. Baker Mayfield loved it, man. He was all smiles.
Yeah, I think he brought the Kona ice truck with him up to Carolina when he got up there that year. They did the training camp thing. Yeah, they were stoked. They were so. I mean, who doesn't get excited on a hot Florida summer day seeing the Kona ice truck roll up? One more player on the defensive side of the ball I wanted to talk about, and we will wrap up with this. Second-year inside linebacker Servassier Dennis, a guy that I don't think is being talked about quite enough. Had a big interception today at practice, stepped in front of Raheem Jarrett for it, but. KJ Britt gets a lot of praise. There has been a lot of, dare I say, national attention about KJ Britt. I mean, there's a lot of sources that are talking about this guy being able to step in just fine for Devin White, who is now in Philly. But Servassier Dennis, you keep hearing more and more and more about how this guy's getting involved and making plays out there at practice. Have you heard anything, and what are your thoughts, Rock?
You know what? I'm glad you brought that up because I saw the interception today and I actually hadn't thought about him. You're right, Rhett. And I looked down, I'm like, oh, Servassier Dennis. Why have I not paid attention to him? I was specifically focusing so much on KJ Britt because he's calling out, man. He is running that defense. And I wanted to watch the difference between when Devin White was here and him. Levante's still going to be Levante, but I gotta do a better job on watching him because he did have that interception today, and I know Jason Light has mentioned him, so that's a good one. That's one of those guys under the radar. I want to see him in the preseason games.
Are there any guys that Servassier Dennis is going to be on that list you just mentioned, but are there any other guys in particular, whether we mention them today or not, that you think fans should be taking a close look at in these preseason games? Because we get very excited about training camp practices, running around in short and t-shirts, but some of these guys, they're going to be getting reps in August that they're not going to see again until potentially December. So who are you watching closely?
Braswell. Keep an eye on Braswell. Under shorts and helmets and shirts, he's looked to me like he is a step past being a rookie. And I think that's a position where they really need it. So that's one for me, Chris Braswell, the rookie. And I really usually don't talk, special teamers, but oh my God, man, their kicker. He's just he's dead solid.
Chase McLaughlin, yeah.
Yes.
Money Mac.
Yes. And he's done it every single time they bring everything in. He looks great. So, and it might come down. You know how close these games are in the NFL. He's looked fantastic. So I don't want to say anything. You can get nips. You know how it goes, but that's huge. That's huge. And he's been dead, solid, perfect.
We've talked a whole lot about waiting around for the Tristan Wirfs extension, Antoine Winfield being the highest paid DB, Baker Mayfield getting his deal, Mike Evans, Levante David. Completely forgot about Money Mac, and he earned every dollar of that contract. He had a great season last year, hoping he can keep that up. Evan, are there any guys on your radar these next few weeks?
Yeah, I am going to keep an eye on a guy like Jarrett, in the wide receiver room. I do think because, you talk about Jalen McMillan and you talk about Trey Palmer and even Sterling Shepard now that he's there, and a lot of people were sort of counting out Raheem Jarrett. And I do think there's some potential there. I think there's a good chance he makes this roster. And I think he could play a lot. We don't know exactly what Sterling Shepard has left in the tank, the Bucs are going to find that out, and I am keeping an eye on Jarrett. Like I mentioned about Culp, he's got my attention a little bit, had a few nice days. I do want to see how he looks in the preseason games. And then on the defensive side of things, I still am a fan of Jose Ramirez, the 2020, I believe, 6th-round pick. I'm a fan of him. He was on the practice squad last year. I'd like to see if there's a little more development there in year 2 for him. We'll have to wait and see.
A couple of guys that I'm going to be taking a look at. We have already mentioned, but on the defensive side of the ball, Servassier Dennis, he's going to get a lot of playing time in these preseason games. I can't imagine, definitely not Levante David out there, but even KJ Britt will be out there sparingly if the Bucs want to have him healthy and ready to go for week 1. So Servassier Dennis getting a lot of reps on that side of the ball, and then Bucky Irving.
And I mean, another thing really quick, because you mentioned Dennis there, and you mentioned the middle linebacker, Kalen DeLoach, undrafted free agent from Florida State, has turned heads a little bit, before the pads came on. He's another guy, because you mentioned how Dennis is going to play a lot. I think DeLoach could really play a lot, too, because there's not really, it's basically David, Britt, Dennis, then like DeLoach, basically, like he's like the next guy. So you're gonna need a linebacker obviously to play in those games. So I'd keep an eye on him as well.
And then Bucky Irving out of the running back room. Gonna be interesting to see how conservative they decide to be with him. Just because Rachaad White's gonna get a couple of reps here and there, but he's your running back one. Chase Edmonds has not been available so far. That could change between now and the first preseason game, but I'm not too sure. So it'll be interesting to see just how physical they allow Bucky to go out there and be. But, if he's running against second and third stringers and he's running great deep into the third and the fourth quarter, that's all I want to see. I just want to see consistent running and something that he can build off of as the 24 season rolls on. But, ladies and gentlemen, I believe that is just about going to do it for today's episode of the Cannon Fire Podcast. Firstly, thank you so much to our guest today, Rock Riley, for jumping on the show. Rock, great conversation as always. Where can the people find you and your takes?
Basically, Real, R-E-A-L, Rock Riley, at Real Rock Riley. Check me out there on social media. One last thing. Excuse me, I've had this cough all this training camp. The one thing that I've noticed is Baker's getting the ball out faster, and the ball is not on the ground. He really, really looks sharp for someone in a brand new offense. He's gotten leaner and just a lot of confidence, and his ball is more like pinpoint this year than last year. So that's my closing take. But Real Rock Riley, always pleasure going on with you guys. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Rock. Honestly, just now that I got you here, I can ask, what do you not cover? Because I mentioned that I ran into you at the Jake Paul fight a couple of weeks ago. You're in the realm of influencer boxing. You're always out and about. If you're not doing football, Bucs Training Camp, or anything in between, people can find you on Twitter hanging out somewhere. You're a busy man.
I gotta be. I can't. I remember there was a guy that worked for an old paper that has since gone bye-bye, the Tampa Tribune. And I remember he was telling me one time the boss came down. He goes, "Hey, you got to be in the office more. And he goes, "Oh, you want me in the office more? And you want me to break stories, right? Who's going to come and knock on our door here in Tampa at the Tampa Tribune and say, hey, I've got breaking news. You got to be out in the field." And so that's why I like going out into the field, the Rays, the Lightning, the Jake Paul, and all that. I got to be out there. I like being in the mix of it. And then I can tell you what I see.
Hell yeah. Well, it's a ton of fun, and we're glad to have you join us today. You can follow our show on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All of those are Cannon Fire Podcast. Best place to go for updates on the show. And, of course, Buccaneer news as it happens. You can follow my co-host, Evan, on Instagram at Bucs_Daily. You can also find him on Twitter at EvanNFL and check out his written work at BucsNation.com. What have you got in the hopper this week?
Yeah, so obviously last week did the training camp battles to watch. This week I will have players with most to prove in 2024. So players that high-profile players, low-profile players, as guys that I think could be due for big years or could be in need of a big year in 2024.
Going to be an interesting read. Last but not least, you can find myself on Instagram and Twitter. Well, just Twitter for now because Instagram's app isn't working. At Reticus, RHETTAKQS. If you follow me, I will follow you back. But that's the show. Thank you once again to our guest, Rock Riley. We will talk to you guys later on this week with some more of the latest headlines and stories from Tampa Bay Buccaneers training camp. I'm your host, Rhett Matthews, signing off from my co-host, Evan Wanish, and Rock Riley. We will talk to you in the next one. Until then, and as always, thank you for listening, and go Bucs.